As Richard's here, we have questions for Richard, and this is a very good one and very topical one. Trusting that you've heard about the Tommy Robinson situation.
Yes, of course.
Good. Well, this is for you. How can the alt-right use for our benefit this Free Tommy movement and general anger against the system?
Well, this is a very big question because I actually did a podcast with Andrew Joyce, and I believe the title was "Ambivalence About Tommy," and that is my perspective on Tommy Robinson. You know, I don't know. I think we should be ambivalent about what he stands for. Tommy is maybe going after the right enemies, but perhaps for the wrong reasons often, and he often makes enemies of people like us. So he and that is basically the EDL, the English Defense League, in a nutshell. I do think that Tommy is a genuine person. I think he has good motives, and I think he's also dealing with a difficult situation just simply living in Britain. Britain has become one of the worst places, if not the worst, in the Western world in terms of the suppression of speech and so on. But I do think that his version of the right is a dead end. I must be honest. This attacking the Quran as the problem. We need base Sikhs or even based Arabs that they can give up their Quran and embrace liberalism, which is apparently what we support, and so on. And then there's a kind of fervent Zionism as well. There's a political correctness, but he is a fighter. I mean, I don't think anyone can say that that's not the case. He probably should not have been doing what he was doing. There are clear, in the sense of his most recent arrest, there are fairly clear laws against that in Britain. He had been arrested for that before. But the fact is, all of that said, this Tommy Robinson thing is just bigger than Tommy Robinson. I saw those images, I guess, 2 weekends ago in London, and I was absolutely amazed at the normal people coming out. And so I think we can express our ambivalences. I think that's important. And we've already done that in ways. I've criticized Tommy Robinson plenty of times over the years. But I think to not see this as some kind of opportunity that we could grasp, I think is also unwise. There are ways in which we don't have to just 100% support Tommy Robinson and what he stands for, but we can say that this law that under which he was arrested needs to be rethought. There's no question that there are double standards, that Tommy is put under extreme pressure by the establishment that other people would not be put under, and most importantly, that this whole free speech debate really isn't about free speech at all. I mean, it is, but it's fundamentally about this angst that needs to be expressed, this deeply racial and cultural and spiritual angst among the British people, that when they see something like Rotherham, again, a sensational news story that was suppressed for a long time and then burst out, they know that that is representing something much bigger. It wasn't just the crime. The crime is bad enough, but it wasn't just the crime. It is a general national humiliation that is taking place. That these rapes were a kind of metaphor for something much bigger. And I think that Tommy Robinson's arrest, even if Tommy Robinson did break a law, which he apparently did knowingly, just the fact that he is just sentenced, sent to prison, so on, it's an expression of something much bigger, that we can't speak our minds about these matters. And in many ways, a lot of white people don't know how to speak their minds. They literally don't have the words for it, because the political discourse has always been given to us from up top. And there's some deep angst. So I think that we need to express our ambivalence. We can criticize Tommy, no question, but we need to start articulating what this is really about. And that's one thing. I got a little pushback from Count Dankula and some of his supporters because I criticized their free speech gathering, which was really pulled off very well. I will give them that. They did a very, very good activism event. And I wouldn't deny that. And I don't want to attack the working class Britons who came out to that and really resonated with it. But I do think we have to articulate in this way of saying, look, what you're concerned about isn't just free speech. Free speech is just kind of like a metaphor. It's just a kind of tip of the spear, you could say, for this bigger issue. And if these alt-light figures like Tommy Robinson or Milo or Colin Robertson, or all these people, it's weird. These people pick up that name Robinson as a pseudonym. I don't know. But if we can grasp what they're doing, express some criticism that's reasonable about it, but don't just try to fight it. Try to say, no, what this issue is much bigger. I think that's our way of doing it, because look at all these people who came out, and some of them are real. There was an expression of a deep set energy, a deep set angst. We've got to be able to tap into that and not allow it to be continually channeled into this kind of dead end right, which was the English Defense League, which is the current alt-right, which is UKIP. To be honest, that was always a complete dead end, which is all of that stuff that's never getting at the real issue. I don't know how to crack this nut, but if we can start to channel that energy without directly opposing it, criticizing without directly opposing it, that's what we have to do.
Well, one thing that frustrates me about the Tommy Robinson demos, people ask how we can harness them. And I have a big concern about these kind of demonstrations because they look great on television. Yeah. They give people a big boost. Everyone's like, wow, did you see that guy in his Burberry cap climbing up the gates at Downing Street? This is it, lads. This is the revolution. We've done it. And then everyone goes down the pub, they have a couple of beers, they go home, and nothing changes. Now, people think the establishment are scared of these demonstrations, but the establishment don't care. This doesn't bother the establishment because it doesn't lead to any kind of political change or genuine social revolution. All it is people letting off steam. And I said this about the Football Lads Alliance. The Football Lads Alliance got about 60,000 people out in London, which is more than double what the Tommy Robinson demonstration got out in London. That's a big number, 60,000 people, and it changed nothing. But if you want to look at really big, let's have a look at the Countryside Alliance. They had about 250,000 people out in London saying, you've got to stop ripping off people in the countryside. You've got to stop taking our culture away. You can't just ban fox hunting. You can't ban our ways of life. You've got to listen to the people in the countryside. And they banned fox hunting. But that was a drop in the ocean. When you look at the Stop the War Coalition, they had 1 million people in London marching against the Iraq war. And we went to war. It didn't have any lasting impact. People went there, they had their placards, they had a great day out. I don't think they went for a beer afterwards. They weren't that kind of people. They probably went for like a hummus wrap or something. And then they went home, and once the hummus had settled, that was it. It was forgotten, it was done. And people carried on voting Labour, they carried on voting Conservative, and nothing changed whatsoever. Nothing at all. And the same's happening with the Tommy Robinson demos. They're a bit of fun. People let off some steam. There's a bit of a kickoff. You chase the police round. You can put Benny Hill music over the top and it all looks quite amusing. But there's no lasting change. And what people don't seem to realize is the only way we're going to have lasting change is if we engage in community building and change people's minds at a grassroots level. But if I said tomorrow, right, there's this park which is full of needles, full of rubbish, full of dog poo. Why don't we all descend on this park? We'll, buy some, steam cleaners and get rid of the graffiti. We'll buy some bags and some, hazmat gloves and clean up the dog poo and the needles. We'll go and do a big litter pick. And when we've cleaned up this park, we'll do a YouTube video and say, this is how ethno-nationalists can help your community. We're about community building. We're about making life better for people on the street. Not about going and chasing the police around London and trying to climb over the gates at, Downing Street and then having a beer afterwards. We want to make life better for you. That would actually get people on board with us and it would build a lasting movement, but no one would turn up. There'd be me and maybe 3 others, if I was lucky to get that many people out doing it. Because unfortunately, once you mix the movement with what is essentially this football lads movement, which is based around chanting, drinking beer, and having a bit of, back and forth on the street, either with the police or with Antifa or with rival football gangs or whoever you can have the back and forward with. That's all it is. And people go home and they think they've done their bit and they get a kebab on the way home and, they wake up the next morning and they feel good. They feel good, but that's it. That's their contribution. That's them done. And they might buy a t-shirt or a cap or something as well and throw some money into a little pot that'll get used for somebody's beer fund. But if we want to do something, we want to make change, it's not about harnessing those movements because the people at them don't want to be harnessed. They don't want to do anything genuinely political. It's about diverting time, money, and resources away from these political bread and circuses and putting our time, money, and resources into the sort of things that Richard's saying or trying to do in America, putting time and resources into the kind of things that I'm talking about here in the UK and building an actual political resistance. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, you're making some very good points, and in some ways, kind of some blackpilling points, in a way, about the uselessness of demonstrations and activism. I unfortunately I have to agree. I think community service, as you're discussing it, can actually go someplace. But even that seems, in a way, one could make a very similar argument to what you just made for doing community service. I think it does present a good message or good optics in the sense that, because an average person, they might look at the rally, the Tommy Robinson rally, and say those people are actually ruining my community. We all have to clean up after these hooligans get together and throw beer cans at bottles at the police and so on. And if you can present yourself as helping the community, I think, of course that's a great idea, but that also might be a bit of a kind of gesture, a letting off steam just in a different way to go clean up a park. I do agree. I think at some point our ideals have to be articulated, politically speaking. And I did not always believe this. And I've disagreed with myself sometimes in the past, as I'm wont to do. I do think that at some point we need a hierarchical structure that is a political party that can plausibly take power and that can articulate big ideals, the kind of stuff that Jonathan Bowden would talk about, but we could articulate them into power. And into programs and et cetera. And I didn't always feel like this. I often felt that we could kind of latch on to the GOP. I often felt that we needed to win this cultural battle and have a culture before we should even take up politics. And I obviously was making important points, but I have come around to this. I do think that there must be a political structure to articulate our ideals in a concrete fashion. And it can't be done by these other parties. As easy as it might seem that we could just take over the GOP or something, we really underestimate its immune system to people like us. It has a very strong immune system that will purge anyone who does a little gesture, like tweets out "It's okay to be white," meme or something like that. I do think that we need one that we are in charge of. And I didn't always think this way, but I do think this way now.